Hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Building Latinx Brand Advocates Through Online Purchasing Insights by Ninth Wonder and Think Now. It's 10 o'clock right now. I'm going to give about 3 to 5 minutes to let other attendees join in. For those of you that are joining in already, thank you very much. There is a chat box there on the side, so please feel free to type in your questions there as we're going through the presentation. We'll have a short Q&A session there at the end. So get your questions in as they come to top of mind. And if we have time, we'll try to get to all of the questions. So thanks, everyone. Again, we're going to be waiting 3 to 5 minutes to let some people join in. Thanks for joining, everyone. We're going to just let people roll in a couple more minutes here. Again, if you have any questions as we're going through the presentation, please feel free to type them in as they come up throughout the presentation, and we're going to address them all at the end. For those of you just logging in, thanks for logging in. We're just going to give a couple minutes to let people log in. We'll get started at 10:05.
You have 2 minutes to grab a cafecito.
Yeah, that sounds good. Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining. One more minute, we're going to get started. All right, let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Welcome to our Building Latinx Brand Advocates Through Online Purchasing Insights webinar, put together by Ninth Wonder and Think Now. Just one housekeeping, we're going to have a Q&A. So if you have questions through the presentation, please go ahead and write it in the chat box as we're going through it, and we will address them at the end. Quick intro myself. My name is Mario Carrasco. I am the co-founder and principal of Think Now. I've been in the multicultural research space little over 15 years now. And my background is in online panel, sampling, specifically in the multicultural space. So the data that you'll see today was pulled from our proprietary Hispanic online panel. And Maria, I'll let you do your intro.
Thanks, Mario. My name is Maria Twina. I have also been in the bilingual bicultural space for 15 years. And prior to that, I spent 20 years doing general market advertising. And I haven't looked back. I enjoy doing both, but I really love the bilingual bicultural market and the multicultural demographics. I've worked on the agency side, on the media side, on the brand side, and I am now at Ninth Wonder, where I'm global head of Consumer X, which is a discipline within the agency that focuses on those consumers that hide in plain sight, yet they drive exponential revenue and fandom or advocacy for a brand, which is perfect for this bilingual bicultural cohort.
So quick little overview of what we will be reviewing today. I already had our personal intros, going to tell a little bit about Ninth Wonder and Think Now, kind of go overview of Latinx and how we're defining it in terms of the research, and then dig into the good stuff, get into the research overview, kind of what our objective was going in through this research project, which is actually the second project that we've done with Ninth Wonder. Talk a little bit about the methodology, look at the results, give you some conclusion and guideposts for marketers out there, and then we will be answering questions. So again, as you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat box, and we will address them there at the end.
All right, so let me jump in just a couple of words about Ninth Wonder. We are a strategic marketing, media, and ideas company with 7 offices and headquarters in Houston. One of the things that makes Ninth Wonder interesting, in my opinion, is that we take a top-down we don't take a top-down approach to anything we do. We take a bottom-up approach. So instead of looking at a DMA, for example, from the top down, we start at a zip code level and work our way up when we look at any marketing program, which if you're into multicultural consumer marketing, you're very interested in making sure that the nuance and the insights are always leveraged in your marketing activities. And on the next slide, just quickly, just a quick overview of, we have all the capabilities and disciplines you would expect from any full service agency. And again, Consumer X is what I lead, and Latinx with a big X is what I lead. And we'll talk about that consumer cohort a little more in the presentation today.
And a quick overview of Think Now. We are a full service market research firm dedicated to being the voice of multicultural consumers. So we apply technologies typically thought of in the general market to multicultural consumers. We saw a gap among research and insights professionals not applying these cutting edge methodologies like mobile ethnographies, online panels to multicultural consumers, when we know in fact they are more technologically savvy in general. And so that's really our core competency. In terms of some of our strengths, we do a lot in AA and Us, so awareness, attitudes, and usage studies. Right now, of course, we don't have any in-person focus groups, but we've been doing a lot of online discussion boards, ethnographies, Skypeographies. Another core competency of ours, brand advertising trackers, concept and ad testing among multicultural consumers. And our newest department, behavioral quantitative research, where we mix passive tracking on mobile apps along with quantitative research. So today, the research that you're going to be looking at is from our full service department, pulled respondents from our proprietary online panel, Diga y Gane.
All right, so let's talk about Latinx for a moment. And the first thing you're going to notice here is that it's a big X, not a little x. And I'm going to explain why that is. If you look at the Hispanic market, across the board today, $2 trillion in purchasing power, 60 million strong, representing 1 in 5 of the US population. But the devil's always in the details, as we know. So let's take a deeper look at the market. We're not going to spend too much time on this, but it's important that all marketers understand the different generational cohorts within the Hispanic market because they're all very distinct. So if we look at the top left, the first generation, and these are census terms, by the way, these aren't our terms. A first generation is a foreign-born immigrant that came to the US at the age of 10 or older. We refer to this cohort in the Hispanic discipline as a Spanish language first Latino. They represent 28% of the market, as you'll see on the right. They used to represent a lot more, but it's a much smaller percentage of the total Hispanic population. This group is Spanish language first, meaning they prefer to consume content in Spanish, and they are reached and touched by Spanish language marketing and advertising. And we say reached and touched purposefully. Reach is quantitative, touch is qualitative. It means that when advertising is in culture and in language, in Spanish for them, that's when they are highly engaged with the content. The second group we see on the left here is the 1.5. These have been lost in a lot of marketing data over the years, and I'm so glad that we reclaimed them. The 1.5 are those foreign-born immigrants that came to the U.S. at the age of 10 or less. We refer to them as an English language first Latino or Latinx. This group, even though foreign born, their primary socialization takes place here in the US. So they behave most like a second generation, which is a US born, like myself, son or daughter of one parent that is at least foreign born. So we are also English language first. And we're all bilingual, bicultural, but we prefer to consume content in English. So this group, the 1.5 and the 2.0, represents over half of the Hispanic market today, that 55%. This group is reached by English language media primarily, but not touched by general market messaging. And we make that distinction because that's the opportunity for marketers to make sure that they speak to this cohort in language and in culture. And as bilingual, bicultural hybrids, they live a duality if you really understand. We refer to them as Latinx with a big X because this group becomes very influential in the Hispanic market. As children, they become Sherpas for their foreign-born parents. They translate the language. They interpret the U.S. ethos of self-reliance, which is very different than the Latino ethos of collectivism. They inform brand and product purchases at a very early age. They demystify services and technology. And it's not a behavior that stops in childhood or adulthood. As they mature, their sphere of influence becomes culturally agnostic. So they're influencing their Latino friends and their American friends as well. Again, 55% of the market. When you hear us talk about the English language first in this study, we're talking about the 1.5 and the 2.0 generation primarily. When you hear us talk about the Spanish language first, we're talking about a first generation Spanish dominant consumer primarily. And last but not least, third generation plus US born child of a second generation immigrant. This represents 17% of the market today.
All right, so we'll kind of quickly go through the research methodology and respondents and dive into the results. So a little bit about the objective here. So as I mentioned previously, this is our second study with Ninth Wonder. In our previous research, we validated the hypothesis that Hispanics are making purchases online collectively. So what does that mean? Spanish dominant family members reaching out to English language first family members to help them make a purchase online. With this research, we went deeper and looked at specific categories to unearth collective purchase behavior differences across these categories. And so a little bit about the research methodology. Ninth Wonder partnered with Think Now. We fielded this July 2020, a little bit over 500 Hispanic respondents, nationally representative of the total Hispanic populace, so that we can dive in and dissect some of those cohorts that Maria mentioned earlier. The way that the study broke out in terms of US-born versus foreign-born reflects the current US Hispanic population. So 60% of the respondents were US-born, 40% foreign-born. another interesting data point. Despite 60% being US born, we saw 72% taking the survey in English, 28% taking the survey in Spanish. Of course, we made the survey available in both languages. This is how the age range breaks out. The way that we determine national representativeness is by the how the U.S. Hispanic population falls out per census, so the 4 main census regions and then the 9 sub-regions. And then this is how media language usage broke out among the respondents. So some interesting data points to point out. So we saw almost 50% of the respondents primarily engaging in English online, and then 35% engaging Spanish and English content equally, and 16% engaging online mostly or only in Spanish.
Great, thanks, Mario. So let's get into some of the findings, which I found fascinating, and I hope you guys do as well. So if for those of you who were on the earlier study a couple of months ago, one of the questions was, do you search for relatives who are not fluent in English? And back then we had 81% were saying yes. This study, 79% said yes, they do search for relatives that aren't fluent in English. The Spanish language first was more likely to say that, yes, I search regularly or pretty often. And the English language first was more likely to say sometimes or no, never. But both of them, it wasn't statistically significant. Both groups are searching for their relatives. The younger segments are more likely to report searching on a regular basis, which is not surprising. They're both searching. So we wanted to find out what are they searching for. But before we get to that, let's get some information here. Who are they searching for? They're primarily searching for their parents. Over half, 59% said they were searching for their parents or other relatives. But parents is a common thread that we saw throughout the research in terms of who they're searching for. And when we look at this a little deeper in terms of acculturation level and age, you'll see here we broke everything out by age group, and here we're looking at who are you searching for across the board. Of those that were 18 to 22 years old, 63% are searching for their parents. Interesting findings just across the board. The younger baby boomers are searching primarily for friends and other relatives. All cohorts are searching for parents, but when you get to that 55 to 64, it becomes more about friends, which is interesting only because at that point they're probably empty nesters and they're probably spending more time with friends. So we thought that was an interesting data point. Across acculturation, the Spanish language first are searching primarily for their children, their spouses, and their friends, and the English language first are searching primarily for their parents and for other relatives, which makes a lot of sense. When we asked them, are you searching for others outside of the household? So now they're not in the household, they're outside of the household. Almost half, 47% of the Gen Z 18 to 22 said they're searching for other relatives. 62% of millennials are searching for parents or other relatives. In terms of Gen X, over half are searching for parents and other relatives, and 50% of the younger baby boomers, again, are searching for friends. And the only difference here is the Spanish language first, searching for children, parents, spouses, and friends. English language first, likely to search for other relatives. You know, and in thinking about this, they are probably now outside of the household. So they're not in the household having the requests from their Spanish language first family members. They're outside of the household, and maybe the Spanish language first family members have all mastered how the search process works, so they're not bothering the English language first for search support. Now, what do they search for in terms of products and services? This was very interesting. The top 5 segments where Hispanics are assisting others in purchases are the following: technology, food, grocery, and VMS, which is vitamins, minerals, and other supplements, medical services, entertainment. Financial services was tied to appliances. So the top 5 are tech, food, grocery, medical services, entertainment, and then a tie between financial services and appliances. Now, if you look across acculturation, there's a slight nuance. Tech, slightly more English language first or assisting in tech searches. When it comes to food, grocery, and VMS, it's the Spanish language first, which makes a lot of sense because that's part of the culture. When it comes to medical services, English language first. When it comes to entertainment, the Spanish language first. When it comes to financial services, the English language first. And when it comes to appliances, the Spanish language first. Just an interesting breakout in terms of helping in what categories, and it really reinforces the point that when brands are in the tech category or medical services or financial services, those categories that have a completely different lexicon, colloquial English, they need to make sure that they have glossaries of terminology in Spanish explaining these and demystifying terms that may be so novel and so difficult to understand for any of us, much more someone who English isn't their first language. So interesting data there. When you look at it across age groups, different groups are assisting in different categories. The younger English language first are much more involved in tech and entertainment. Gen X and the younger baby boomers are involved in medical and financial. And appliance searches are coming from millennials and young boomers primarily. Again, very interesting because depending on what brand you work with and who you're supporting in terms of what marketing activities you have, if you understand what age groups, if you represent any of these categories and understand what age groups are searching for their Spanish language first relatives, I think it's important that you market to them and make sure your user interface is very clear in terms of where the Spanish language content is available. We also were interested in what price points. Were there price points where the Hispanic market acts more collectively? Interesting to note. So where most of the activity lies is between the less than $50 to $500 range. When it comes to collective searches, that's where it's happening. The English language first is more likely than the Spanish language first to report that they're assisting in this range across family and friends. The Spanish language first also assists, but the English language first are assisting more so between the $50 to $500 range, and the Spanish language first at both ends of the spectrum, at less than 50 price point and the 500 to 1,000 plus price point. Very interesting. Maybe they're helping out with appliances or those bigger household items where the English language first is helping more across a whole bunch of different products and services at that price point between 50 to 500. Then we asked specifically what price points do different age groups within the English language first assist family members or relatives with. 75% of that 18 to 38 said they're assisting in the $50 to $100 purchase range. Gen X, that 39 to 54 English language first, is most likely to inform the $100 to $250 one, though they're informing all of them. That seems to be the sweet spot. And the 55 to 64 are informing purchases with greater emphasis on less than $50 to $100 price point. Again, an interesting finding. I would have thought they were more involved in helping with larger purchases, but that's not what the survey results indicate. Now, we know that Hispanics are known to drive word of mouth because of their collective DNA set, if you will. They tend to be very collective and very much driven by their social networks and informed by their social networks. So we asked about online, if you've had a positive brand experience, what do you do? Right? You're online, you feel like you've been welcomed, you have a positive brand experience, what do you do? All Hispanics across the board said that they like the brand on social. So there's definitely that activity happening with almost half of them. Now, if you look at it across acculturation level, there are slight nuances. The L for the English language first is more likely than the Spanish language first to share via word of mouth. rate the site or customer service, and take an exit survey. I thought that was really interesting. They are much more proficient in the English language, so it makes sense that they would rate the website and the customer service, that they share more via word of mouth. They probably have more people to share too, because their sphere of influence, as we talked about earlier, is broader, because it includes both their Hispanic friends and their American friends. And exit survey, that makes a lot of sense to me, because they want to have their voice heard. They feel very confident with the English language, and they want to participate. The Spanish language first is more likely to share on network, which makes sense because that's where their sphere of influence lies. And then we asked across age group, what does the English language first Hispanic do? And across the board, they're more likely to like on social and share via word of mouth, closely followed by rating the website and customer service. All of them tend to rate customer service and the websites, but Gen X was the most active in doing so, or rated that as definitely something that they do. They're also very active in liking on social, sharing via word of mouth, rating and sharing on the network. The interesting data point here is that when it comes to taking the exit survey, the baby boomers are the ones that were most likely to do so, with 48% reporting that they do that. And of course, you could argue, well, they probably have the time. They have more time on their hands. Maybe they're retired. But again, if you are a brand and you are marketing to the Hispanic market and your products and services target this 55 to 64 or 74-year-old cohort, you want to make sure you have an exit survey, because they're more likely to take it. And then social networks, they've changed so much with different popularity levels across the years. We wanted to ask, which ones are you most engaged with, spend the most time with, and like the most today? Interesting that Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram are the top 3 when it comes to Hispanics in this study, full stop. The Spanish language first and the English language first, though, they tend to prefer slightly different networks, where they are pretty much in line completely as when it comes to YouTube, with 67% of the Spanish language first and 66% of the English language first reporting that as their favorite network, or the one they're most engaged with. Where they're not aligned. So let's go down this. If you look at Instagram, there's a slight skew toward English language first. WhatsApp, much more Spanish language first. That's been a reality since the inception. When it comes to Twitter, English language first, more so than Spanish language first. Same with Snapchat. TikTok, the surprise here was Spanish language first, to skew toward that. And I've been thinking about this, because the English language first, the median age of the English language first is 19. They skew younger than the Spanish language first, but all groups love video. Spanish language first love video, so it makes sense that their TikTok is one of their preferred networks. Pinterest was interesting. English language first, even though it's a very visual medium. English language first skew on Pinterest and LinkedIn. Another surprise, Spanish language first. I think I was going to assume, that's why we never assume, because the data always confesses, right? I would have assumed in LinkedIn it was more of an English language first, and Mario and I were talking about this yesterday. You know, the Spanish language first may have gotten hit more in terms of employment with the pandemic, so that might be why there's a slight skew there. But also LinkedIn now is offering Spanish language profiles, and that may be what's driving that as well. So we'll see. We need to follow this and see if it changes over time post-pandemic. Social networks of the English language first across age group. The English language first prefers YouTube to Facebook and Instagram. Again, video is just big. The 18 to 22 cohort favors YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, and TikTok. Not surprised there, those skew younger. Pinterest, equal appeals to 2 cohorts, the 23 to 38-year-olds and the 39 to 54-year-old Gen X. Very interesting. So it's got a millennial Gen X skew, and LinkedIn preferred by the 55 to 64 age cohort. Again, young baby boomers. looking for work, looking for board positions, who knows, but that's where we are there. So what does all this mean to brands? Let's first look at some of the high-level conclusions. We know that Hispanics across acculturation levels are assisting members of their collective, both inside the house and outside of their home, in purchasing products and services. The top 5 categories are tech, food, grocery, and VMS, medical services, entertainment, financial services, and appliance searches. Those tied, financial services and appliance. The English language first is more likely than the Spanish language first to assist in tech, medical, financial services, and the Spanish language first is more likely than the English language first to assist with food, grocery, VMS, entertainment, and appliance searches. When it comes to the collective, the price points where we see most activities between the $50 to $500 range, and the English language first is more likely to be assisting family and friends in this price range. When it comes to social, they're more likely to like a brand on social if they've had a positive experience online. And we know from other research that they are 5 times more likely to share. They're more likely to purchase what they like. So they are if they like something, 50% of them are likely to purchase it. So make sure advocacy and posting on social and creating content on social networks that appeal to this target is part of the marketing story or marketing plan for your organization. The English language first is more likely to take the exit survey, as we saw. They're also more likely to rate the site and share via word of mouth. Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram were the top 3 social networks, with YouTube carrying appeal across both cohorts. The English language first are almost twice as likely to engage with Snapchat. So some guideposts for brands, definitely consider Hispanics when developing your online search strategy. We're seeing that 79% are searching for family and friends, both inside and outside their household. So you have to have a bilingual search strategy. I think that's an imperative because that's the genesis of that online user experience. It starts at search. So make sure that you are welcoming them, if you will, at the search stage. If you don't have a Spanish language site, make sure you have an easily accessible and obvious translation app, Spanish language chat, and or a Spanish language toll-free number available. And they should be clearly visible. They shouldn't be buried at the bottom of the page. When that happens, it does create a negative brand experience for the Latino consumer. I know that when I've searched on behalf of my Hispanic relatives, and I've got to do work to find the Spanish language content, it makes me feel like, are you embarrassed to be courting me? Am I not that important? And so make sure that it's a positive experience and it's at the top, front and center early on. It validates that consumer. Brands in the tech, medical services, and financial services sectors, make sure you've got online content available in Spanish, because remember, the English language first is the one doing the primary searches in these categories. We saw in our previous research that many times they actually translate all the content verbally for their Spanish language relatives. That's an incredible burden and an incredible onus on any consumer. So make sure you have content that's not only easily shareable, it's in Spanish, and remove that burden from the English language first, because that will create a positive brand experience for everybody. I have to do less work. I don't have to verbally translate. I find information easy that I can just pass on to my parents or older relatives. They can consume the content, then we can make a collective buying decision depending on the price point. Spanish language glossaries, videos, phone, chat, the site, everything needs to feel welcoming. It should demystify the product and the service, and it should facilitate making the decision. So make sure if you're working for a brand that you follow those guideposts. Brands that are in the food, grocery, VMS, entertainment, and appliance categories, we know that in these categories, it's the Spanish language first. So you must have Spanish content available online, because that's the consumer that's most likely going to your site. They'll be leading these searches, and promise you they will gravitate toward brands that welcome them in language and in culture. So keep that in mind. Brands with products or services in the $50 to $500 range, again, have easily shareable content in Spanish or chat or toll-free, anything available, because the consumers that are going there, you've got a lot of English language first, Gen Xers who are going to need help translating. They don't have a lot of time. They're busy at work. They need brands to help them demystify and educate their foreign-born relatives with your content, your service offering, your messaging, all of that good stuff, your differentiators. Most Hispanics are online and active on social. We know that. We know that the Spanish language first prefer Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, TikTok, and LinkedIn, and that the English language first is about Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, and Pinterest. So if you're developing content for your social networks, make sure that you're culturally and linguistically relevant in terms of posts. And we highly recommend that you have links to videos in Spanish that are easily shareable, because then that English language first Sherpa can share the information quickly and co-brand for you, basically, because that's what they're doing. And finally, the English language first is more likely to take an exit survey or rate the site or customer service. If we know that going in, make sure you're catering to that consumer, make sure it's a positive experience, as we talked about, and serve up that exit survey post engagement. Have your social network icons. That's another thing. Don't hide those at the bottom. Have them front and center, because we know this consumer, the Hispanic consumer, is more likely to like. So have those social network icons front and center as well. And that concludes our findings. And I think we can move on to questions, Mario.
All right. Thanks, Maria. And so we do have some questions. Here we have one kind of from the beginning here. How big is that generation 1.5 that you were talking about, the percentage of total?
So yeah, so it's close to, it's in the $4 million range. It's 26% of the first generation cohort. So I can give you a number. Let me do my math and I will find a number for you.
All right. Let's see. Next question here. How does the 48% like on social by Hispanics compare to other groups? So Black, Asian, non-Hispanic, white. I can talk about this because this research was actually focused 100% on Hispanic respondents. So unlike our other research where we typically look at a total market view, we did not include those respondents, but that'd be interesting to follow up with, right, Maria, to see how to look at other cohorts, because we did a little bit, I believe, in the first research study, right? We did non-Hispanic.
Right. So we should definitely do that. And for the question of the 1.5, I did the math. It's I knew it was in the 4 million. I didn't know the exact number. It's 4.368 is 1.5. 4.368 million. So 4,368,000.
Okay. Thank you. Beatriz has a question for us regarding that LinkedIn stat that we were talking about. She wanted to know what the ages are of the Spanish language and English language first, because LinkedIn has had a hard time connecting with U.S. Latinos even pre-pandemic. That data, we didn't break out the ages specifically, but
no, we
didn't. You know, kind of roughly what? Do you know roughly, Maria, kind of where SLF and ELF land in terms of average age?
Well, yeah. So English language first, 19 is the median age, and Spanish language first is higher than that. But I can pull LinkedIn. I don't know if I'll have time to pull it right now, but I can pull LinkedIn and see if we can find that. Or Beatriz, I can follow up and send it to you.
All right. So yeah, we have some good questions here. So please keep them coming. Our income levels overlaid on these acculturation models. Interested to see that, especially as we are looking at purchase behaviors. I can talk a little bit to that. So yes, they're not overlaid, and in other words, they're not part of the acculturation algorithms, but it is something that we do capture. So we can tell you, for example, less acculturated versus more acculturated, what that medium income is going to be. So I can get back to you, Luis. Maria, off the top of your head, any kind of insight into income levels when it comes to purchase behaviors? I mean, I know there was a little bit in terms of the average purchase price, which is not exactly income levels, but I think it indirectionally or indirectly points to something like that.
Yeah, I mean, we can pull the income levels. I'll make a note here to do that. But off the top of my head, I don't want to give a number that's incorrect.
Hey, Luis. Luis, we have your info, so we'll get back to you on that. Guy, the term Latinx is not widely used among Latinos, and awareness of the term is very low among them. Who did that research?
We know who did that research.
Why have you chosen to use this term rather than Hispanic or Latino? Maria, I know you talked a little bit about that. It's a big X, right?
Yeah. Right. It's not Latinx, and it's such a nuance. Thank you for pointing that out. So the Latinx in our agency falls under consumer X, and consumer X is a big X. It's those consumers that hide in plain sight and drive exponential revenue and fandom for a brand. So Latinx with a big X. Are those consumers that are English language first, primarily bilingual, bicultural, that drive exponential revenue and fandom. That's the only reason we use it. And Latin X with a small x. I agree with you. We've talked about this a lot. It's okay for B2B, but when it comes to us, I certainly don't refer to myself as a Latinx, though some people do, and that's fine. And Hispanic is the term that we've used for so long, or Latino. So I agree.
Yeah.
It's a term that it drives a lot of conversation, if nothing else.
Yeah, for sure. Guy mentioned that Pew did the research. We actually did it like 8 months before Pew and had very similar results.
Yes, you did.
April, do beverages fall under the food/grocery category?
I would assume so. I think the way it was worded, it was food, grocery, or vitamins, minerals, and supplements. So I would make the assumption, yes, we didn't call out beverages separately. So I would assume the consumer included that in there.
This is a really good question. I have insight on that from a different study. And Maria, I'm sure, can speak to this. For English language first Latinos, how important is that brand messaging be culturally relevant? And do you have research data that indicates that English language first are receptive to culturally relevant messaging? Yeah, so we actually conducted a study probably a little bit over a year ago looking specifically to that. And we did ad testing where we actually did controls of 30-second spots with culturally relevant messaging and those without, and saw a significant lift across some key brand messaging metrics like purchase intent and positivity, receptivity to the brand. So definitely, and cultural relevance doesn't mean language, Spanish language, and so we controlled for that as well, putting in some cultural elements specifically that resonate with Latinos. Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have many years of experience working with English language first Latino, and have done a lot of tests with Fortune 100 brands. So just to be clear, we talk always about being in culture and in language. And in culture is definitely having that cultural nuance, or we call it the wink. It's a guiña. It's kind of like the secret handshake. I'm part of your fraternity or sorority. I get you. And in language, I've seen through tons of studies with clients that if you are both in culture and language, that's the winning formula. And in language, meaning primarily in English, with a word or two in Spanish, and it's not just any word. I mean, there's a science behind it. I've had some folks say, "Oh, so I just have to translate this." No, you have to think it through. I mean, it should have emotional resonance to the consumer. I've done studies where the first word is what's changed, or the last word is changed, or the action word is what's changed. There are a lot of variables, obviously, to any copy or any creative. So you just want to make sure you take the right path and save yourself a lot of heartache. But I've seen in culture and in language always wins, regardless of who you're talking to, whether you're French, whether you're Asian, whether you are bilingual, bicultural, half French, half Dominican, it doesn't matter. As long as you're speaking in language and in culture, that's the win, because that means, you know, the brand recognizes you and ultimately validates you. And we talk a lot about in the office about Maslow's theory of self-actualization and the need we all have to be validated. And one of the ways is we need to see ourselves. And so make sure that it's in language and in culture. Any other questions?
Oh, we'll leave it open for a minute or two, see if there's any more questions here. Yes, I can share that study with you. All right, Maria, should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. Thank you guys for joining.
Yeah, thank you everyone for joining. I believe we're going to be making this recording available for everyone, and we should be publishing the report as well. So again, thanks for joining. Thank you everyone for your questions.
Thanks, guys. Have a wonderful day.